Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Lynn and today I have the February 2023 Spellbinders club kits that I get. I don't get all of the kits, and if you haven't already heard, you probably have by now if you are a kit subscriber, but Spellbinders has adjusted their kit options. And so the APG Die of the Month that I used to get, that no longer is a club kit. December 2022 was the last one. They've introduced two additional club kits, so they now have the 3D embossing folder of the month, which is fantastic. So they still have the regular embossing folder of the month, but now as a second option, you can get the 3D version, or I shouldn't say version because it's not like they're different designs. And so I opted this year to get the 3D club kit, just so that I have something a little bit different. Last year I got the 2D one when that first came out, so I don't know what I'll do next year, but I'm excited to play with the 3D folders, especially since and I mentioned this January in my January video too. Now that I have the universal plate system, I can use any embossing folder, especially from Spellbinders, and I know exactly the sandwich combination to have consistent results every time. And that wasn't the case before because while I do have the platinum machine, the plates for that when they first came out, the 3D folders from Spellbinders weren't a thing. And so you might have seen that they've started to now include the universal plate system just as a rule now with the platinum machines, because there's more plate combinations, but that gives you like a finer degree of just getting the right amount of pressure through, so that especially with the 3D folders you can really appreciate the effect that these folders have, because it is unique. If you're new to 3D folders, essentially, the best way I can describe it is, if your regular embossing folder, let's say your paper is down here, and your design basically will push some portion of the cardstock down, making it so that some portions look raised, and the raised portion are what we would consider the embossed design. So if you were looking at your paper from the side where my wrist is, maybe that's the base level of the paper, so then your embossed design looked like this, where it was raised all at the same level, more or less. With a 3D folder, the way that the plastic has been designed, instead of raising the design all to the same level like this, then you have like different levels. So you can get something like a dome, for example. So your paper is still here, but instead of your flower going, straight across like this, now you can have a flower petal that actually looks curved and domed, where it comes maybe to a peak and then it gets a little bit more shallow. So that's the best way I can kind of show in a larger way what the effect of a 3D folder is. And it's gorgeous. And so I knew when they came out with this and started this club kit this year that I definitely wanted to give it a try for this year, give the club kit a try for this year, because I only have a couple of 3D folders and I have a lot of standard embossing folders. So I thought this would be a good, being part of this club kit would be a good way to kind of build up my stash of 3D embossing folders. So that's the design that we get for February, which is lovely florals. And this is a pattern, this is one where I think it's pretty much non-directional, which I love. Personally, I prefer the patterns that are non-directional, because basically the size of the folder, the embossed design is half a sheet of paper, so 5.5 by 8.5. But if you're like me and you make smaller cards, like USA 2 size cards, you can emboss the entire folder and potentially get 2 card front designs from one pass through. But that only works if the design isn't strictly oriented in one way or another. So if there is no orientation, then it's fantastic because I can take my one piece of paper, emboss it, and then cut that panel in half, and then get and then if it's a matte layer, I might even trim a little bit off, just so that it's a little bit smaller so that some of my card base is showing, but essentially I can get 2 embossed panels. The other way I really like to use embossing folders this large is that, let's say there's a particular floral element up here, and I really love that design, and so I know I want to use that design, and so maybe I'll put that off to one corner, like how I have my panel positioned here. And this, I don't mind so much. So maybe this is where I'll put a sentiment or, my focal image or something else. And so you can be really selective about how and where you position your panel if you do make smaller cards. And of course, the one of the obvious benefits of having the larger folders, you can emboss larger panels. So if you make larger cards, like a 5x7, you can emboss a full-size panel for that. Even if you're making like 6x6 cards, you could emboss 5.5 by 5.5, and then maybe cut slightly larger matte layer to go underneath it. So lots and lots of different options for this size folder, which I love. So that is the 3D embossing folder of the month. Then the clear stamp, which comes as the option to get just the stamp by itself, or you can get the stamp and the coordinating dies. This one's super cute, very Easter themed. So we have little bunny rabbits, and they're kind of tucked into and peeking out from different things. So here, this one's peeking out of a pocket, this one's peeking out of a decorative Easter egg, and then this one's peeking out of sort of a half wreath. And then you have some sentiments to go along with it. And we do get interesting the options for dies. So there's 2 dies that will cut out this one and that one, but you don't have a die to cut that one out. And then we do get dies for all 4 sentiments. And then there's some smaller images, which I wouldn't necessarily expect dies for that. I think those are great for adding little accents to your sentiments, or maybe even stamping out a background. I just think it's unusual that there isn't a die to cut this image out. Unless for whatever reason I didn't get it, but that I haven't found to be the case usually. And so that is a little bit odd to me anyways. So then we have the small die of the month, and this one I think is going to be fun to work with, something a little bit different, and I'm actually pretty excited by it. So it looks a little bit abstract and hard to really tell what's going on, and I think that's going to be part of the fun of it. There's 4 different shapes. So we have this trapezoid, a hexagon, teardrop, and then sort of an ornament shape. Then for each of those shapes, we also have a die that just cuts a pattern into it. It doesn't have an outside cutting edge. So you could take, for example, this trapezoid die and then tile it across a panel, for example, and it would just cut that design into your panel. And so you can layer the outside cutting edge die with the pattern or the design die, and have sort of a two-tone layered look where you cut one out with the design and one out without the design, and you put the solid one behind there so that that has a different color that peeks through the areas that are cut through. So I think that's going to be kind of interesting just to see how these different patterns look when you cut into them. And then besides that, it's just really nice to just have these basic shapes, I think. So I think that's really awesome. And then we get lots of little florals. These are pretty tiny. Maybe like 1/2 inch is the largest, but they are layered. So you have one that's a little bit of a solid, and then one that has some deboss detailing. And so you can layer them on top of one another. There's lots and lots of little florals like that. So that is our small die of the month. Kind of something a little bit different and abstract. The large die of the month is fantastic. Great for I mean, you can really, do up a whole card front with this, because there is the largest die is a rectangular straight edge, and it will cut out your US A2 size card panel exactly. So this outside rectangle will cut 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, which is sometimes nice to have a die. I mean, certainly if you have a paper trimmer, you can always trim down your cardstock to that size. But when you cut things with a die, it does give you that nice rounded professional edge along all the edges. And in particular, I think that can give you a really nice finish. And so we do have that die. And then on top of that, there are these 2 options for the sides. And I think you can, it's designed so that you can actually take this die, rotate it, die cut it twice, and then, rotate it 180 degrees and put it on this side. So we have 2 different options, for that reason, because they can be mirrored. And so that way, because you wouldn't necessarily use it this way, I don't think, where you're using one design on one side and the other design on the other side. Certainly you can. I think that might make for something that looks kind of interesting. But the idea is they've really maximized the metalwork here, because you have the 2 options. So you can choose this pattern, which is sort of foliage, die cut that twice, take one and just rotate it 180, and then put that on this half. And you can do the same with this one, which is a little bit more of a geometric. The geometric pattern sort of resembles this oblong shape here. So it's kind of like a circle that's been extended in the center. So if you took out the straight part and you kind of pinch these together, I think you would probably have something of a perfect circle. And so it's not really oval, because these 2 edges are straight. And one thing with that is, because it's straight, if you use this die by itself, one of the interesting options that you would have is you could also extend this to be longer if you wanted. So take, for example, if you have a piece of paper like this, and let's say you actually want this oblong kind of shape to go all the way across, what you could do is take your cutting plate and your top cutting plate and just cover up, where the straight line is, and then cut. And then you could flip this around, line up this straight edge with a previous cut line, and then cut from this end. And so you can get this to be longer if you wanted. And if you wanted, you could even, just cut from one end with the straight edge. And if you drew like a straight line all the way across, you can cut the half circle from the other end and then just use a craft knife to connect the two. So it's kind of cool. A little bit more options with an oblong shape like this as compared to an oval, because the oval, it's rounded all the way around, so you can't really stretch it without it looking a little funny. So so what's nice about having that is, you know, you can get a perfect matte layer right in the center there, so it will have the exact same kind of margin as all the way around this panel, that design. So pretty cool. And then we have some florals. So this is sort of the backing plate of a floral spray, sort of. So you can kind of make out that there's a couple of flowers and maybe some leaves and whatnot. And you do have the separate dies to fill in those floral designs. So you have that one, and then you have this one as well. And lots of different flower shapes to kind of fill that in. And then you've got this, which is kind of cute. So this is like a little, I think it's more of like a scalloped edge rounded square. And then you have deboss sentiment plates. And so we have Happy Easter, Hello Spring, and Thank You. So really nice. And you can kind of, it's not a postage edge design, but the size of it kind of reminds me of a stamp. So kind of cute and pretty neat. So that is the large die of the month. Then check this out for the glimmer plate of the month. Look at that. So it's kind of like a field of tulips, which is nice and wide. So this is actually 5.5 inches. So you could fill sort of the entire length of your card landscape if you wanted. And what's cool is you even, with the coordinating die, this is a border die. So it'll give you a really nice shaped border. So you could glimmer a panel and then cut out that border and then just add that as a layer on top of your card base. So that's pretty cool. And then you have a couple of sentiments, glimmered sentiments, and a die that will cut out your sentiment strip. So the two sentiments are sending flowers and a smile. That's really nice, because you could use that really any time of year. And hope blooms, which is a really nice encouragement sentiment. So those are the February club kits that I get, and of course I'll have my flip video where I make at least one flat, one layered, one interactive, and one pop-up card, and I'll link to that at the end of this video along with my Spellbinders playlist, where you'll find all of my makes that feature Spellbinders products. Thank you so much for joining me today. Until next time, happy crafting and have a fantastic day. Bye.